That's what they hear, and it's also a lot of fun, though, just like getting different components in school.
they're gonna get paid no matter what. They're gonna get paid by the government. The bill is being passed on.
Be more alert as well. It's nice to sit around and stare at mountains, but again, if you lived out there, you're gonna be seeing the same mountains every day, and I think the charm wears off after like day 3. I don't know, it's one of those things where it's pretty, but.
Won't get you a friend of police to cut up.
There you go, yeah, exactly, then the mountains start changing.
Morning, peeps.
Morning.
How's everyone? Sweet. Morning, everybody on the call.
Doesn't feel like they're new, side meets.
Doesn't feel like what?
You're new back like.
Oh, yeah.
We did have the Wednesday.
We did have Wednesday. Cool. Well, let's hop in. So, there's a lot going on in the React world right now. Yeah. So, React came out. I don't know. It started getting really popular around 2015. I think that's when I first started using it. It was 2015 or so. Came out before that, I would assume, but and it was class-based. So there's still people that have code that's written in the React class-based style. They always had the function-based component, which is what you all write now. You write a function and it can take props in, and then it returns the JSX for the HTML that you want. They always had that, but if you wanted to use state, which you very often do, you had to have a class-based component, and then like you had all these different lifecycle methods, like when the component would mount, or when it would unmount, or when it would update. And all of that got replaced with hooks. So now you can write a function-based component and you use the state hook or you use effect hook to do all those same things. So that was the first, React came out, and then there was that big change in React to hooks. And that was, I don't know, that was a few years ago or so.
So it's been, that's the older system, one that people could still be using. It's totally oblivious to, oh, look, different.
Yes, yeah, because like often, like what happens is you have a company, they decide to use React, they write a ton of code.
It looks great.
And it's working, and then like React will update, but it would take like a big effort to rewrite all their stuff, so they don't. And like React doesn't force you to by any means. They still support all the old stuff. So there's a big update happening in React where they have introduced these things called server components, and you might have seen that. You'll also see in React world this like distinction between client side rendering and server side rendering. You maybe have seen that. So you'll hear about server-side rendering a lot when people talk about SEO. Or like statically generating a site. And so that's a concept that we don't really need to learn. You usually need to worry about it if you're making like a public site, like public meaning like the content is public, like you don't have to be logged in necessarily. So like a marketing website or a blog, something that you can just like go to and see. Often you'll need that to be SEO friendly because people are searching for it or like sending links to it. And so it has to be it has to sort of be statically generated by the server so that it's sending HTML and CSS whenever you hit the URL, instead of like hitting a URL and then getting a bunch of JavaScript that then updates the page. So if you think about that, like if you write a React app, do you need in here?
Actual words.
Oh, do you need it? We're gonna be in here for about 2 hours. It's probably okay. Yeah. Okay, I'll let you know. If you wanna go ahead and try it. So the way that we've been writing React so far, which is typically how it always has been written, is like the page is created in the browser. So like you like load React into the browser, and then React, like the JavaScript, changes the page and renders the page, creates the HTML. So like that's not super SEO friendly because the actual content of the page isn't there until it's actually loaded. Okay. You can't see anything. Yeah, exactly. So like, yeah, if you can disable JavaScript in your browser or whatever, but like almost every website wouldn't work at that point,
Yeah.
except for statically generated websites. So so there's this big movement in React right now to create something called server-side components, which are not necessarily the only reason for that is not SEO. There's actually like a really cool like performance benefit. So like, we're always trying to make websites faster and load faster and change faster and render faster. And so server-side components is like a new thing in React that is mainly a performance boost, but also can give you the benefit of it being generated on the server and being SEO friendly.
Yeah.
Okay, so that's one kind of thing happening in React. So when you go to the React site, you'll see that. So if we go to like react.dev is the new site. If you dig around on this enough, you'll eventually start seeing them talk about server-side components. So if we do okay, yeah, so I think it's this. So that's like this server API stuff is these new things that are coming out related to server components. Okay, so we don't need to worry about server components. Like I haven't even learned them or used them yet. They just came out. So like this, but just know that that's kind of happening. The other thing is that there's this platform called Next.js that you may have seen. And Next.js has been out for a while. It's sponsored by a company called Vercel. There's a lot of this stuff where like there's a company that's created, they create open source software and provide it for free. But then if you want to like easily use it, they like have a subscription that you can pay for. And it's kind of sweet though, but so Vercel is a company that makes Next.js. They also, like, if you want to deploy your app, it's like they've made it so easy. So if you write Next.js and you want to deploy it, it's like a click of a button and your app's like deployed and you don't have to do anything. Okay, so Vercel came out and they were the first people to make it so that you could write React code and make it SEO friendly. So they have all these features to be able to generate your app on the server and like create the HTML and the CSS and then send it to the client rather than sending all the JavaScript to the browser and then the browser creating the HTML and CSS. It'll like do it and the server then send it. So the Next.js is a framework that started providing that. And it kind of got huge and kind of blew up and is super popular. And you can also use Next.js to just write like the same client-side code. So you don't have to do the server-side rendering. You can also just do normal client-side code. So we've been using Create React App, which was sort of like the React provided way to get an application going. They now like officially, if you like, these are new docs, they've like deprecated Create React App. And yeah. And now if you are trying to like get started, to start a new React project, you'll see that they now pretty like the first thing they mention is Next.js at this point. Yeah. So, and then there's Remix, which is a brand new framework or pretty new framework as well. And like, you don't even see Create React App on here anymore. So this is all very recent, like all within this year, this all happened. So there's like a lot going on. So you don't need to understand all this. Just know that that's kind of, it's like a major change in the ecosystem is happening. And so a lot of people are now switching to Next.js. Next.js is also having this massive change that's from pages to app router. App router is like new, it just came out into like production ready this year. We are going to use Next.js. We're not going to use the app router because it's like very new. So a lot just came out of my mouth, but the thing you need to know about Next.js, sorry, let me make sure there's not questions I'm missing here. What we get from Next.js though is actually a full stack framework. So Next.js is both a runtime system for writing React applications. It's going to feel very similar to what we've been doing with Create React App. Very similar. So it provides a very similar experience to that for writing your front end. It also provides a backend, all in the same like app, all in the same package. So we'll get like a full stack, like when we do Create Next App instead of Create React App, we'll be generating both our front end code that we need to be able to write the React App and the server code. It's going to make both for us. So it's going to simplify, like normally, it's like last year, we teach Express and React, two separate like folders, two separate projects. And you write your server code and then you write your front end code, and your front end code will like make an HTTP request to your back end code. And with Next, it kind of gets mixed together and it's nice. It simplifies things. So this is the first time we're teaching Next just because of all this stuff that's happened. Now Next, the backend server framework of Next is basically Express. It's not identical to Express, but all this stuff you learned about Express before this class is like still applicable. And it's good to know about Express. Express is like the most popular Node like server framework. So tons of apps are written in Express. It's good to know about. And Next.js sort of like couples Express and React into kind of one framework.
That's good sound.
Yes. Okay. Okay, any questions about any of that?
You kind of answered the one question I was playing around next, were great.
Yeah,
Not probably. Well, wondering, and getting deep enough to understand. Moving this functionality. Express server.
yeah, so.
So, I was looking at that.
Mhm. So there's so I'll show you this in a second, but basically there's like an API folder in Next. And that's where you write your routes, your backend routes. And the app router and the pages router both have it. Yeah. Okay, this will, when I show you the actual, like when we generate a project and I show you the actual code, I think it'll make a lot more sense. But yeah, we're not gonna worry about server side React or static generation of React. It's not something we need. Like most web apps do not need that. Like when you're building a like typical web app that a company is going to provide, it doesn't need to be SEO friendly.
Right.
Yeah.
Because you've got a captive audience.
Yeah, so I mean, most of the time what you'll see is like if you go to what just happened here? Let me think of a good example.
A lot of companies.
Like
Technical.
Sprint, T-Mobile, I mean, we don't SEO our network, it's a worldwide network where employees are on the internet. But we SEO our sales site.
Exactly, yeah. So this is Clerk is a authentication like company. So there's a lot, like, you know how we looked at Twilio and SendGrid. Like this is, it's so common now to like, you know, you provide some sort of service to developers to make it easier for them to build their web apps. So Clerk makes it easier to do authentication. So to have sign in and user management and like secure, like it's like super easy to let people sign in with email or phone number or Google or like whatever you want. So you just sort of like choose what you want and then they provide all that for you.
And I assume it helps to like keep it all secure for you, so you don't have to worry as much about that, or.
Yeah,
Like,
exactly.
second.
You don't have to like write all the code to like make sure that people can't like guess over and over and over and over again and stuff like that. Yeah.
Okay, so
So this is an SEO site. Like this is, and it's a marketing site. Like this is all, I don't have to be logged in to see this. It's at clerk.com. So I use this actually at work. And so there's like this dashboard, which you can see is routing. If you look at the very bottom, it's going to dashboard.clerk.com. You'll see that all the time. So like the main website will be like, this website's probably generated by Next as JS actually. But then when you want to like actually use the app and log in, like your personal pages don't need to be SEO friendly. Like Google can't, because that you have to be logged in to see it. So it, like, doesn't matter that Google can't like properly scrape it and stuff. But yeah, usually what you'll see is when you actually log in and use the thing, it'll be like app.clerk.com or dashboard.clerk.com, or it'll be a subdomain of the, yeah. So you'll start noticing that all the time now. Okay. All right, so the main thing we want to do today though is start writing these backend routes. So we learned a little bit about, you know, there's get and post and put, and then there's the specific like URLs that you would use those methods on that dictate what resource you're trying to utilize or manage. So we looked at like that API site that had like posts and products and to-do items. And there was like, you know, get to-dos or update to-do or delete to-do. we need to learn today how to write code that would create like that backend. Like, so we were interfacing with the API, like as a client or as a front end, like there's an API that you can interface with. How do you actually write the backend that creates that API? That's what we're going to be doing today. So we're going to be using Next, but we're not going to do much with the front end part of it. We're going to be mainly focusing on the back end part of Next, which is the API creation part. Okay. So, whenever you want to make is that big enough? Bigger. Oop. Whenever you want to make a new project, yeah, what's up? Whenever you want to make a new project, you are going to be doing it similar to what you were doing with Create React App. So you move somewhere in your folder for wherever you want to make the project. So I'm going to module 5 and then day 2. So I want to make a new project here. The command for that is npx create next app instead of React app. And then you put at latest to use the latest version. Oh, let's get cut off. That's annoying. That's a good spot for that. At latest just means use the latest version of this creation script. And then you give it the name of the app. So the folder name it's going to use. So our first next app. Okay, so you'll hit enter, but then it's going to ask you a few questions. The answers to these questions are really important for us. So I have them documented in the README for today. So you got this little like interactive command line app here. So you can use the arrows to go between yes and no and then hit enter. So we don't want TypeScript. So we're writing plain JavaScript. We haven't learned TypeScript. TypeScript is just like a version of JavaScript that includes types. So like you're using types in JavaScript, like there's string and number and Boolean and all that stuff.
That's right.
But you don't have to like specify that in your code.
Mhm.
And TypeScript allows you to like say, hey, I'm going to write a function, and this function takes a parameter called name that's a string. Normally we just say we take a parameter that's name.
So it's
And
more
we
like-
just assume it's a string because
Or
we're
like other languages then, like C++.
Yeah,
like that.
yeah, yeah,
Okay. I
yeah.
remember us talking about that way at the beginning of class then.
yeah. So we haven't learned that. So no on that. Yes to ESLint is fine. ESLint's like a there a linter is something that sort of like says like how you should format your code, how you should like certain rules. So there's like just say yes for now. We'll learn more about linters later. No on Tailwind CSS because we're going to use MUI.
So
Material
no
UI.
TypeScript?
No on TypeScript. Yes on ESLint. No on Tailwind. Yes on the source directory. It's just how we want to organize our code. And then I know it says recommended, but I do not recommend App Router. So no on App Router. And then no on this one.
Could be very important.
Oh,
That's it for today.
Hey, sorry, we lost internet. I was wondering why the install was taking so long. All right. All right, cool. So now we've got the folder, our first next app. So we can CD into that. Actually, yeah, that's fine. And then we can open that in VS Code. Okay. So you can see we have a source folder because I said put the code inside the source folder. That's just an organization thing that I preferred. And pretty much normal stuff you've seen before. Package JSON, there's a config here specific to Next that you don't need to worry about. An ESLint, which is specifying like rules for how we want to format our code. You don't need to worry about that. Public folder, which has like our favicon and a few images, probably pretty used to that. Node modules. And then notice in our package JSON, we've got, React as a dependency, Next as a dependency, and then the scripts here, pretty similar to the create React app scripts. The main one we'll use is dev. So you do npm run dev, that will do the like development server, auto reload stuff that we're all used to. So that's pretty much the only command you need to worry about is npm run dev. That'll start it. All right, so let's go ahead and do that. So I'm going to go back to my terminal. And you can also be doing this in VS Code terminal if you want. But we're going to start it. So npm run dev. And it's going to listen on localhost 3000, just like create React app did. So we can go to that. And you'll see kind of what you're used to, which is like them putting something in there automatically. So they already built out some pages, just like React app had that like spinner.
This will be spin. That's cool.
This one's like, yo, we're Vercel, and here's like our docs and stuff. Okay, so so we have the development server running. We have the client that's like creating the site, but we also actually have a backend server running too. And we'll start playing with that in a second. Okay, so a few things. We're not trying to understand too much the structure of a Next app quite yet. I'll do that in more detail later. But there's this pages folder. That's an important folder. That's where you put your pages. And Next is Next uses something called file-based routing. So depending on like the folder name that you choose and the file name you choose, that will actually create routes for the front end. So we used before you guys use React Router to make like different routes on your page. Next actually has a router built into the framework, and it's file based, meaning like the name of the folder will be a route on the page. So if I add a folder in here that's like coffee shop, and then within that folder, like menu, and then I put a page in there, if you go to localhost 3000 /coffee shop /menu, it will display that page. So it's a lot of people like this style. It's pretty cool. So that's why. So we have this pages folder. we have this index.js. Index.js is often like, meaning like the main file, or like if you put index.js inside a folder, it's like the main file in that folder. And so index.js is the like root route. So if you just go to localhost 3000, where the index.js inside the pages folder, that's like the root route of the app. And so that's why this is the page that we're seeing. So if we go to that, this is just React. This is exactly what you're used to. You know, we're exporting a function. And then we've got React code here. And this is the page that we're seeing at localhost 3000 is that index.js. So that's sort of like your app.js and create React app.
Okay.
Okay. So you can see inside this pages folder is the API folder. And the API folder is a special folder where all of our backend code will go. And notice there's this file called hello.js. So if we go to localhost 3000/API/hello, that is going to run that file. Okay, but this is not a React file. This is a backend API file. And so it's very different. But this is what it should look familiar in terms of the Express stuff that you've been reading. Okay, so this is a request and response function. Very similar to Express. The difference here is that we don't put, like when you were reading the Express homework, we put the path in that handler. Like you put like, this is for /coffee, or this is for /coffee/menu, or this is the root one, or whatever. Since we're using Next, it's all file based. So the path is dictated by the file name and its location in that project. So that's what I mean by /API/hello will run this handler. And you can see this, it doesn't do anything with the request, but it takes the response. It says, so this is very similar to Express. Response.status 200. So set the status to 200 and then respond with, so we always respond with JSON. Like we almost never do anything besides JSON in an API. Maybe you do like a file occasionally, but it's almost always JSON. And so like they make it super easy to respond with JSON. They have this method called .json, which expects you to give it, you don't even have to serialize it. You just give it the object. It will serialize it for you, set the response code, or set the content type, like the headers, like content type application /JSON. Like it will do everything needed to make a proper JSON response in an API. Okay, so like based off what I said, I know it was a lot. But if we go to localhost 3000/API/hello, what do you expect to see on the page? Do you expect to see React? Like, do you expect to see like a web page? Or do you expect to see
It's just gonna return.
just the
Yeah.
JSON? Yeah. So we have, yes, so that's what's going to happen. So if we go to, so on this page, localhost 3000, we're getting like a React app, we're getting a page, we're getting a web app. But if we go to /API/hello, then we get the JSON. Yeah. Yeah. So this is like all in one backend and front end framework. And like, yeah, makes it super easy to write both in one place. And then like you deploy it with Vercel and you've got your backend and your front end deployed, working great. This is what we started using where I work recently. Instead of like having separate backends and front ends.
It's like it's super awesome. Just push to get automatically.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, we just started using Vercel too. Yeah, it's like blowing up, like everybody is starting to use it because it makes everything so easy.
Cool, so it's a pretty recent development too overall, right? So you guys jumped on it pretty quick at your company there?
Well, Next.js and Vercel have been out for a while, but like the adoption of it is changing rapidly.
Okay.
Yeah, yeah.
Interesting.
Okay, so the main thing you need to focus on now is just like being able to write these handlers, though. That's our focus today. So if you wanted to make a separate route, that's not, so, right, so notice we went to localhost 3000/API hello in the URL, which dictated this. So if you're inside pages, then you're like setting up your router, basically, if you're inside pages.
Yeah.
So like a folder that you add there is significant. It's not like willy-nilly, like you know, normally in React, you can just make whatever folder you want, it doesn't matter. Like this is literally changing your app if you're doing inside pages. So API, also a very important folder, dictating that we're not writing React anymore, we're writing backend code. And then the file name is what's dictating the route. So if you wanted to go to, so right now, if we go to localhost API/coffee, what do you think we'll get if I go here? What?
Hello?
Well, we're switching to, yeah, 404.
So yeah, we get a 404 if we go to that. So localhost 3000/API/coffee. And you can, it's actually next, like, is creating a 404 page for us
Right on.
and like rendering it. But normally people would probably write, like, you can customize what that would do, so you can have it not be a page. But yeah, that route doesn't exist. We didn't write it, so we get a 404. So if we want to have that route exist, like if we want to have this respond with something, go ahead and see if you can make that happen. And just, you don't have to, like, you can just have it respond with the same thing that hello is responding with. Anybody not getting something?
I think so. Stop.
So do npm, do you?
I did it. First,
Okay, and what folder are you doing?
they.
Okay, yes, do ls here. And so you need to see those two.
It's the.
Which are.
Okay.
And now you can do, yeah.
That will pop, right?
Yeah, that's, yeah, you can, okay.
Sure.
And you run. Okay, so now go to slash API. Slash. And then now try to do the have it be slash API/copy.
That's pretty cool, actually. Like just set up your route with the folders, makes it a lot simpler. Yeah,
And we do the same thing for the React code too.
will we still be able to do like, when you have like a nav bar that's over everything that works on every page?
Yeah, so there's a thing called layout. And if it's like that, like every page is like that, it's really easy. If certain pages are different, it's a little bit more complicated, but yeah, you can do it.
Okay, right.
The API files. Academic API folder.
Well, you can, so what happens is if you have like other things. Like if you have like other functions that are like utility functions, or if you've got like components that are shared. You put them in different folders, so we'll make like I typically, and it's kind of up to you, so like. If you have like database stuff, which will have database stuff, that'll go in like a folder somewhere else, and then your handler in the API will import it. From there and do whatever you need to do with it. So we'll sort of see that today, because I've got like a fake database thing that we'll play with.
Right on.
Okay, so to make this happen, this route. We need to make a file. Called coffee. .js. And it doesn't matter what it returns at the moment, because we're just trying to get the route to work. So I can just copy this file. Exactly, and then just rename it to coffee.js. And so it responds with, maybe I'll just change this to, instead of name, like. Name's fine. You know. Okay, so, man, that's for sure. Okay, so I have a coffee.js, I have my handler. We give response status 200, and then I'm sending it different data. Whatever data I want. So now if we go back and hit this, now we get that. Okay. So remember last time we made that server just with plain node? And it didn't care what the URL was, it didn't care what the method was. Now we're writing something that cares about the URL. So this is only going to run if someone's going to /API/coffee. Do we care about the method at the moment? Like, do we care if it's a post request or a GET request or a delete request or a put request?
Really screwed.
Do it.
Not it.
Not at the moment, yeah. So this route runs, so if we open, so we were doing a GET, like whenever we go to that URL in our browser, it's always a GET request, no matter what. But if we go to Postman, we can go to that same URL, so localhost HTTP ://localhost:/API/coffee is what we just made. So we can do a GET request to that and we get back that data that we sent. We can do any other type. So we can do a post request if we want to. And we get the same thing because it doesn't care. So what we've done so far is we have a handler that runs for every, it would like any request that hits that URL, whatever type it is, the handler will run. So so notice we're not looking at the request currently. See if you can figure out how to change this to only do this if it's a GET request. And then otherwise respond with 404. And so you'll need to look at the request. The request, that parameter that's passed in is details about the request. And it's very similar to what we did in last class to be able to change that. All right, so, there's. The docs are pretty helpful for stuff like this, so if you go to Next.js. And you go to the docs, you have to specify. That we're using the pages router. When you go to the docs. Cause so we're using the pages router instead of the app router. And then they've got this routing section. And then they've got API routes, which is what we're using at the moment, so. So you can, it's a part of the homework is reading these docs, it'll be helpful. So you could have read that, you could have also like given this to ChatGPT and been like. Add, like only do this on. For GET requests, other like, yeah, it probably would have shown you. But on this, it does talk about that, so you can see if you scroll down on the docs a little bit, they've got. Hey, if you want to do stuff for different. Methods, then. You know, the request has the method on it. And so you just write a simple if else statement. So, yeah, we'll do if requests and look at Copilot, yeah. So request.method is, I'm gonna say is get. Then we want to do this. Else. We'll do response.status 404. And we get to decide like how we want to respond to 404. Or how, sorry, what like content we might want to provide, because so the status is 404, but like we can send back HTML, we can send back JSON, just kind of it's up to you and like how you're hooking into the API, how your front end's hooking into it. I typically do .json and then maybe provide some sort of error message or something. So there's nothing about this property error that's like, yeah, I made that up. I could have had this be, you know, that I could say, hey, every time I send back an error, it's going to have a message property with the description of it. Because I'm going to like, you know, on my front end, I might on error, like show an alert or a toast or something and just like put that message in there kind of thing. But yeah, this is sort of just, I'm deciding on this. It's not, there's no like specific convention or anything. Okay, so, yep, so we're back to Postman, localhost 3000 API coffee. If I do a GET request, then we get the pour over. Status 200 okay. But if we do anything else, if we do a post, for example, we get status 404 and then message not found. Yeah. So, yeah, I mean, pretty cool, I think. Like normally Express is a lot more, Learning Express is a bit more to it. But so like when we were playing around with that JSON placeholder, what was that called? Dummy JSON. We were looking at all, you know, they have all these different URLs. Like you should be able to kind of imagine how you might build this same, like if you wanted to build this.
Yeah.
And next, you know, you'd make a post file and then just have an if check for if it's a get versus a post versus an update versus delete, you would do something different, but that would all be at API/post. We're going to see in a minute, like you might have, like when we're doing RESTful stuff, you'll have like the resource name being like posts or menu or to-dos or something. So there's like a collection, there's like a thing. that usually is that's usually the resource. And then that URL usually supports get, post, put, and delete, that same URL for, getting that resource. Sorry, it doesn't support put or delete, it just supports getting it and adding a new one. Put and delete are then usually a additional parameter after the resource, specifying the ID of the item. So like post slash ID would be another route that you'd have to make. So we're going to learn about how to do, you guys in React, you learned about how to do those dynamic parameters, right? Where it's like, you go to like post slash, and then like, you're like, anything can be here, and I'm going to like grab it as a parameter basically.
Yeah.
So we can do that with Next.js too. And our file names, they have this like special naming convention for the files where you put it in, not brackets, but square braces or whatever.
Okay.
So for that, typically what we do is instead of making coffee, because we want to do this, like what we're going to be doing today is trying to make the routes for coffee shop menu. So we want to be able to get all the menu items, and then we also want to be able to like delete and add and update menu items. So if we want to do that, so if we want to do, API, and maybe we're going to build out our whole coffee shop, right? So we'll have a shopping cart, and we'll have, like someone that wants to order coffee, they would need to be able to see the menu, but then they'd also need to be able to make an order. So we'd have like maybe an orders collection or something. So we're going to have like multiple different resources in the back end of our coffee shop. So perhaps we do like /API /coffee shop or coffee /menu. Maybe that's where we would do the menu resource. So for that, we would do, /API, and then we would make a folder. So instead of a file, we'll make a folder, and we'll do coffee. Okay. And then inside coffee, we'll make another folder called menu. Right. Okay. Now, if you wanted to do menu, and you wanted to like just do like a get request on menu or a post request on menu, we could have just named that. We could have made that a file. We could have done menu.js, but we also want to be able to do menu / like ID for a specific menu item. So like you can't, once you make something a file, you can't like go any further.
That's the end.
That's the end. Yeah. So if you want to do a route on menu, but then have stuff below that like we'll do this folder, and then you do an index.js to do the routes that would be on the menu. Okay. So let me just show you. It'll make more sense. So yeah, in here, I'm going to do index.js. So index.js is inside menu. But then if we wanted to do menu /ID, then we make this file called ID with these brackets .js. So now we've got, I'm going to delete coffee, this file here, by the way. Yeah, I'm just going to straight up delete it. Okay. So if we kind of look at our routes now, we've got API, and then we've got hello. So, /API /hello, we'll run this file. Then we've got coffee folder, And then inside coffee, we've got the menu folder. So we've got /API/coffee/menu. And then we've got index.js, which will handle menu. /API/coffee/menu. But then if you specify anything further, that will be like if you do like menu/1 or 2 or 3 or 4 or whatever, then that's going to go to this ID route, which is not ID, but it's like brackets ID, which means like capture whatever they typed. And then this will receive, like, so if we do let me just. Damn it. Thing's so smart. Damn it. Okay. And let's just do. Okay, so it just like regenerated, but I deleted before, which is awesome. Okay, so now we've got /API/coffee/menu/index.js, which will hit this. And then I was gonna ask you to figure out how to do this, but then we've got the ID. And notice this is the same. So if it's a get, respond with status 200 with the JSON of pour over, but notice it's also passing the ID. And if it's not a get request, then respond with 404. To get the ID from the request, it's on, like, so just like the method is on the request, well, actually, is it gonna be query? I guess it's probably right. We need to go to. So this learning how to do this is all in these docs here. Yeah, so they'll give you, in the docs, their cookies will be on there, which we're not going to do anything with cookies. The query will be on there, the body will be on there. So when we do a post request, we need to access the data that they're sending. That'll be in the body. And then query contains the query string. So let's read more here though.
Really, it seems really similar. Express somewhere.
Yeah.
Stuff variable name.
Yeah, so this was like heavily, it's not literally expressed, but it was like heavily influenced by it. Yeah. So these response helpers are what we've been using so far. The status is to set the code, then JSON is to send the JSON body. Okay, so dynamic API routes is what we're kind of playing with now. And you can see here's their example here. So if you do, their example is for posts. So API/posts brackets, they're doing PID instead of ID. I think that's post ID is probably what they mean by that. But yeah, okay, so that does come from query. Normally, when we learned about routes, there's a difference between like a route parameter and then like a route query. Like one's with the question mark and the other's like actually in the route. Next.js actually, like, I think shoves both into the query for you. And so that's why that's like that. So, which is kind of nice. Oh, okay. And you can actually, it looks like you can do it 2 different ways. I usually do it this way. So here's option 2. So, this is referring to the folder. But, and then you do index.js, and then we're doing id.js. But we could have also kept our file but then had a folder and then put the post ID in there. I prefer this style. Okay, all right, so this is correct here. Like we can pull the ID from the URL. So let's play with that. So we don't have API/coffee anymore because I deleted it. Yeah, we have a coffee folder, but we don't have an index.js in there because we just put menu directly in there. So we're not going to get anything for this anymore. We need to do API/coffee/menu. This does exist. If we do the get request, we get pour over, which is coming from this index.js code, right? So if it's a get request, we respond with pour over. But if we want to do our ID route, then we would do / and then whatever we want to type here. So 1 is appropriate. And so you can see it's pulling 1 from the request.query and respond and adding that to the response. And so if I just change this to, whatever, it's just pulling whatever I type here. It doesn't have to be a number either. It can be gobbledygook. Yeah. But if I add another / and then type something, what do you think I'll get? Yeah, 404. So that it only is expecting me to have 1 parameter. And that adding that / then kind of changes the route. Okay. All right, so now we're set up with this format. We're set up to be able to do on the index route. We're able to get all the menu items with a get, with a post. We would need to provide a body. And we would need to update our method to handle the post, but we could add a menu item with that. And then we're also set up, if we have an ID, like 1, we're set up to respond with that item. But we're also set up to say if we did a put method or a delete method to delete that item with that ID or update that item with that ID. With put, it's the same as post and that you need to provide a body. You need to provide the data that you want to update. So like we might make a menu item and it starts off with price $4.99, but we may need to change the price of that menu item. And so you would have the menu item ID and you would say, hey, I need to update the menu item with this ID. And then you provide in the body what you want to change. So you would just pass like the new price $5.99. And that's all you'd have to pass. Because all the other data, you would just keep the same and you would just update that one property. Okay. Any questions about this? We'll take a quick break after this. Yeah. Okay. All right, let's just take 5.
Can I see the code from IDs.js real quick?
Should be ID. So like what you put between these brackets matters. That's what the parameter is going to be. So notice ID is here, and that's why I put ID here. Has to be the same.
Right, okay. I was just curious where the pour over was coming from, but I can see it on here. I thought it was pulling it from the index.js or something like that. Where it
Yeah,
says,
I've got pour over
line 5.
twice. Yeah.
Yeah, okay. Just want to make sure I wasn't missing something. Thank you.
That ID beam there, is there ever a situation where it would 404 if you did menu / whatever, is it always gonna return something? Like, are we gonna use if statements to determine what it does when it gets 1 and 2 and 3, or how does that work?
You usually will use the ID to query your database for an item with that ID.
It's kind of what I figured, yeah.
Yeah.
And if it doesn't exist, I guess you just have something there that says like,
Yeah, if you like search for that ID in the database and you can't find it, then you'd probably say respond with 404. I couldn't find that item. Yeah.
I just did a little bit, well, I say, but I did a class of SQL in college, but I liked it a lot. But I've done it for 20 years. I really liked like SQL specifically because it's basically just like speaking English to a computer. It's like, get this, do
Yeah.
this with this, blah,
Yeah.
blah. And then it just kind of goes.
Yeah, it's kind of crazy though, that like a big string. It's like a big thing of text is like dictating what a program does. It's kind
Yeah,
of wild.
it's very weird and it's like we're using, what was it, Mongo? Is that right? Yeah. Is it similar in that sense, or I haven't really looked into it yet?
No, it's feels more like you're writing like
I got
a JavaScript. Like it feels like
Okay.
you're like, like an array method,
you.
like filter, find.
Mongo is those.
Yeah, yeah.
So it's the complete opposite without being.
I like it.
Gotcha. I'll have to get used to it too then. But
Yeah.
it should be interesting.
Upside down, better than.
If you like SQL though, Python is gonna say where.
Really?
You can read it out loud and it kind of sounds like a little.
Python's the only like major language that I could think of at the time when I was in college, but they just didn't teach, they just didn't even cover it at all. So I really need to look into it, but that sounds pretty cool.
Yeah, it's more, it's shocking like in demand.
Really?
I think it's a lot.
Yeah.
I think it's shocking too, and I think it's that transition.
I'll keep that in mind.
They need people to get a grip on SQL working. So,
And I think it's just,
that-
Python has always been really popular, but I think it's because it is so user-friendly. Like it. It's one that's always preaches like if you're gonna learn a language, start off. with
Like
Python.
one that you can kind of jump into.
Yeah.
Okay, got it.
Because again, like what you pointed out about SQL, you can read it out loud. It's like, hey, I can kind of understand this.
a lot of the, agencies and stuff, you see,
Yeah, they do. I mean, SQL is, you're the SQL learner. So,
Right.
So you'll see those SQL more like startups, things like that. And then obviously like entities that are more established, they're gonna want structures. Yeah, so state agencies, government. Website called Automate Word Stuff.
So,
Yeah, great, it's really good one. It's a book. It's totally 100% free online, you just have to read it off your screen. Yeah, because I went and print it off, and it's like. Couple hundred pages. And I was like.
I can't snip all that.
I'm gonna be upset if I like go to the public library, like, yeah, print off this book.
Yeah, we're not gonna.
That's a great book though, because that actually like shows you how you use Python in your everyday life.
and again, I'm looking at this for sure.
All right, let's hop back to it. All right, so, you typically don't write an API like these handlers without using a database. Like, you pretty much always are going to be using a database. So these handlers, you'll be, writing your code. And then based off like whatever the route is, you'll typically be doing some sort of database interaction. So for example, coffee/menu, if we hit that route, so hitting this index file, if we did a GET request on coffee/menu, we want to respond with the menu. Like all the items on the menu. And so you would do a DB request and say, hey, give me all the menu items. And then you would respond with those menu items. If it was a post request to menu, you would say, okay, well, like, give me the data I need for that menu item. So like name and description and price, and then I'll add that to the database. So you do, you know, like insert this item into the database. And then same for update and delete, you know, we'd be deleting from the database or updating an item in the database. So we haven't learned databases yet. But I've written like a fake one for us to use. So, and it'll make sense. I'll show it to you. Okay. Okay, so I'm going to. All right, so there's making a new file called coffeedb.js. I'm not putting it inside the pages folder because I don't want it to be a route.
Yeah.
Right. It's just code. So I've got coffeedb.js. This is our fake DB that I'm writing. And then I've got all these functions that I wrote. So a database, you can think of a database. Have you guys heard of database table, when people say that? You'll hear people say like table or collection. And those are synonymous. In SQL, it's table, and NoSQL, it's collection. You can think of that, a collection, as an array of objects. That's basically what it is. Like there's a bunch of, like, if you've got a menu collection, then what's in that collection is menu items. And if you like insert a menu item that's got like a name and a description and a price, it's like the first, and there's only one in there. It's like the first element of an array. If you add another one, it's like the second element of an array. So the collection's like an array, and then the actual elements are the items in your database. It will feel like that. Like it will feel like you're dealing with an array of objects. So I've got this CoffeeDB.
Like pushes on there as well.
The term for that is like insert, typically. That's what you'll see. But well, this fake one I'm using push
Okay.
because I'm using it. So basically I've got a file and I've got an array
Okay, so
that's
this is
empty
an
to
actual
start.
array.
So I've got, yeah. So like this menu, if I like start the server and it's running, and like I add items to this array,
Mhm.
it will be in memory until I restart the server.
Gotcha.
So and like a database is something that like is like persisting to your file system,
Yeah.
basically. So like if it crashes or like restarts, it's like still there,
Mhm.
you know. Whereas this one's just in memory, but it's gonna work. Like we'll be able to add stuff to it and delete stuff from it, as long as we don't restart our server. Yeah. Okay, so I've got this array here, and then I just have some functions: add menu item, list menu, find menu item, update menu item, delete menu item, and search menu items. These are all very similar to methods you would get from a database. They wouldn't be named this, but what they're doing will be very similar.
Yeah.
So list menu is like, just give me all the menu items. So it's just going to return that array of objects, or it's going to return whatever is currently in there, right? Add menu item. For us, I'm deciding what I want the schema to be of our menu items. I want name, price, and description. So that's to add a menu item, you have to give me name, price, and description to add it. And so then, but then I'm a database, and so I make an ID for you. You don't give me the ID, I make it for you.
Mhm.
So I'm just making it what's called a what do they call that? Iterator in primary key or something.
Mhm.
MongoDB has this like fancy, like huge gobbledygook string for the ID. Whereas in a lot of times in SQL, they just do the row number basically. So that's what this is I'm taking the current length and adding 1 to it. So the ID of the first item will be 1 instead of 0 by doing it this. And then the second item will be 2 and 3 and then 4. This actually isn't good because if you delete something, you're not supposed to reuse that ID.
Mhm.
So this is actually bad, but it's okay. It's not on a real database.
Got it.
Yeah.
Yeah, you had a lot of inventory, different types of inventory. It could be a disaster.
Yeah,
Just use like UU, right?
I could, yeah. That would be better, but I'm not gonna change it at the moment. Okay, so this will add, so this will make an item, give it an ID, and then push it into the array. And then find menu item takes an ID and then does the array find method and finds that item with that ID. Update is very similar to add, but it takes the ID.
Mhm.
So to update something, you have to know the ID. And then it will find that item. Notice I just use that same method. Find that item by ID, and then if it exists, then I will take the name, price, and description, and then update those on that. Normally, you would want to make these optional because you don't want to have to like pass all the data. You want to just like pass the thing you want to update.
Update, yeah.
So I'm gonna actually update this. So I'm saying if you gave it to me, then I'll update it. Otherwise, if it's undefined, I won't do anything. So basically, like if I only passed in name, it would update name and then leave price and description alone. It would leave them as whatever they were before.
Yeah.
And then delete takes the ID, finds that ID, finds the index, the position, and then removes it from the array. And then search, you'll see this a lot. Think about like if you were looking at like the Starbucks menu, they probably have a search bar at the top and you can type like scone or something and it'll filter to whatever. Typically they just like I mean, it can be quite fancy, but like a simple implementation is just like take what they typed, scone, lowercase it, and then find anything that includes that and then yeah. So for us, that's what we're doing. So we take the item dot name. So we do menu dot filter. So all the items, filter them, and then include the ones where the name of it dot two lowercase includes the query dot two lowercase. So if you type scone and the name was blueberry scone, it would match and you would get that back. So these are all the different database methods that are available to us in Zach's fake database. And we just want to hook these up to the API so that our front end can do this, can query for this.
Yeah.
All right, so I've got coffee db.js. It's just a file that I put in the source folder. I could have put it anywhere I wanted except for pages. Yeah, because pages is significant. So I could have made a folder here, but I'm just going to put it there for now. But if we go to our index for menu. So if somebody does a GET request on slash API slash coffee slash menu. Which method do we likely want to use from this?
Just for the menu itself, just list menu.
List menu. Yeah, so we want to return the whole menu.
Yeah.
So we'll go to that. So if request method is get, then we will import that method. So list menu. And this is the other thing that's great about Next.js is we automatically get the better import style.
Yeah.
So this is back end code, and normally we have to do like that require stuff. But Next.js is using all the different tools we need to be able to write it this way.
That's pretty sick. I guess.
Yeah, so notice I'm importing a specific function that was exported from this file. So, and it's like, because we like have nested this so deep into our route, it's like way up there, which is why they have that when we, one of the options was like change the default or change the import thing, which allows you to do like tilde, like a home directory / coffee DB. Honestly, we could do that next time because that's gross. This is really gross.
Was that one of the options that we?
That was when we did create next app. That was one of the options that I didn't, that I said no to. Okay, but list menu, we're importing, because notice like all these functions are exported,
Yeah.
export, export, export. So all of these functions you can import by name. And so that's what this is. So inside the brackets, we're saying get this specific name, that for the function with this name from this file. So we're importing list menu, and it's a function that we can call. It'll give us back all the menu items. So I can assign this, like const menu equals list menu. And then we'll just respond with menu. Okay. So we'll go back, we'll do a GET request to API / coffee / menu. What do you guys expect to see? What's the response going to be?
Empty array.
Nothing.
This thing like does the speaker through,
It's a little muffled, yeah.
how do I not,
It was funny.
Oh,
can you say that again?
Yeah, someone said empty array. That's what it'll be.
Yes, it'll be an empty array inside an object, and the empty array will, because I put like JSON with menu. You guys know this, right? If you put like a constant inside brackets like this, it'll automatically make the key menu and then put the whatever the value is. Like normally you would have to do this, like I want the key to be menu and then put the value of menu there. But that's so common that there's a syntactical sugar to not have to do that.
short.
Is this just for the server or just?
This is just JavaScript in general. Yeah. So yeah, we'll have an object with menu and then it'll be an empty array.
Yeah.
So yeah, because we haven't added anything to the menu yet. Okay, so normally if this was a real database, we would be doing like a database query, which will look like a function call. It'll be like menu.find. And you would call it, and it would, if you don't, and so it'll give you back everything. And normally that would be asynchronous because it's got to like go talk to the database. And so we'd be like const menu equals await menu.find. And then, but everything else would be the same. So this is not that different than what it'll actually be like when we use a real database. Except it'll be async.
I have a question. So why would you pass in the menu as a, so you're returning the JSON menu and then the array, why not just pass the array back to the,
Yeah,
response.
I could do that. You will often see people still nested though, but you could.
got it, is it a standard or is it like,
No,
is
it's
it
your
just
choice.
personal preference? Okay,
Yes, totally. So yeah, we could just have it be the array. Yeah. But yeah, I usually do it this way because often you'll have other properties and they just like standardize that every single API route is gonna respond with an object. Just kind of simplifies things a little bit.
so if you had like, a separate, well, I guess they would just check the status, never mind. So if you would normally have things listed with menu that they would probably be checking or something,
Yeah,
or
but yeah,
just, okay.
yeah, you might have like. Uh,
Because I know code, people like from some of the APIs I pulls like code, and then they have the whatever the object is or whatever, and then the object's data inside. So it'd be like code 0 is success,
yeah,
and then you check the code, and then
yep. Yeah, there's
or like
often,
error messages and stuff. Yeah.
yep. Okay, all right, so why don't, I guess, are you guys all caught up to this? Do you have this?
I don't think that-
It's interesting describing
Oh, I didn't give you the DB, so obviously not, yeah,
errors.
yeah, Okay, well. Yeah, just, all right, so if we want to just think in your head, don't actually code. If we want to do post now, so if we're hitting the same route, we're hitting menu, but we want to add a menu item. And so, we'll do else if yep, if request, that's so great sometimes. So if it's a post, we want to add an item to the menu, add it to the database. So we want to use this method, right? Add menu item in this case. So I'll import that. Okay. So I need to call that. But like like typically, like if this was real, then this would be sort of like somebody's like admin portal that lets them manage the menu, like some internal employees using this. And they've got like a page and they click, it says like, like add menu item, and they click the button and then it gives them a form. And the form would have name and description and price, and then they hit submit, right? And so like the data for what goes into the database is coming from the front end, which it's passing in the request.
Yeah.
So we need to call this add menu item, but I need to get the data from the request. So take a second to think about how that would work, or like what you think might need to happen to get the data. And remember, like the docs on Next.js have it. Just take a second and think of what that code would look like. It's on that page that I slacked.
Yeah.
or request body.
Yeah.
Oh, was I not supposed to say that? I'm sorry.
Oh, you're good, you're good. All right, so, yeah, you can see on this page. Got these request helpers, which are the different things that are on the request that's passed in. In yeah, body. And notice it's an object containing the body parsed by content type. Or null if no body was sent. So if you didn't send anything in the post, the body would be null. But if you do, then it's gonna look at the content type and try to like correctly parse it. So if we do JSON, which pretty much everyone does, in terms of what we send, then it will know to just turn that into a normal, it'll parse it for us. So we're the request.body, when we're using it, will just be an object like you're used to. Assuming that they pass JSON and set the content type, which we will when we write our front end. So yeah, I mean, you just do, if it's a post, then we know that const menu, it totally did it right. It const menu item equals request.body. Okay. So like I'll pass a JSON object that's got name, description, and price. So body will have the keys, name, description, and price on it. So I can actually just pull those out directly. I mean, this is another fancy JavaScript syntax, because like body is an object, and so you can pull the keys out of it like that. People do this so often. This is so common now, so you got to get used to seeing that if it's unfamiliar to you. Okay, so we have those now, and add menu item expects those. Name, it expects name, price, and then description. Okay. So name, price, description is what it expects. The way I wrote add menu item is it takes those things, it makes it that object and adds the ID, pushes it to the array, and then returns the item. Because you often want to return it so that you know the ID now. Like the person that like submits it often wants to like know that it was successfully added and then know what the ID is. Because like you might think about that internal admin, they may like submit that item, and then maybe you want to immediately go to the detail page of that item. Well, the detail page needs the ID, and so like you would be able to do that. Often though, you probably would just go to like the list all menu items, and then you'd want to see that item in there. But yeah, it's good. Again, you decide what you want to do, but it's good practice to, if you are adding something, to then return that thing that you just added. So add menu item does that. So we'll get const, added menu item equals that. And then we'll do response dot status. you'll often see people use 201 for this, which is a specific status that's it means created. So you'll see 201 created. And then we will do, I'm gonna name this key menu item instead of added menu item. All right, so if it's a post, then we're expecting you to have given us a JSON payload that has name, description, and price. And we then call our DB, add this item method. We then get back what was added to the database, including the ID, and then we respond to the front end with, hey, that worked, and here's the item that we made. So we can test this. So we'll go to Postman. We're doing coffee/menu, but in this case, we're doing a post. And then Postman provides an interface for us to be able to specify a body. So that's this body key. And then I know that this is a lot here, but you go to raw and then you do JSON. Okay, so what this does is sets the content type to application/JSON so that the API knows that you're sending a JSON. Yeah, and then we put JSON in here. So we need name is pour over description. All right, and this has to be JSON, right? So I have to put it in quotes. Description is takes 4 minutes. And then price is $4.99. And it's giving me these red tildes because it, JSON, the key has to be in quotes. All right. So I can send this and we'll get 201 created. And then we get that object with, honestly, I probably would have I probably don't need this nested key here, actually. Yeah, I'm gonna change this to just be that item. And we'll add another one. We need to add another one anyways. So do Mocha. All right, so we're gonna add another one. We still get 201 created, and in this case, I'm just giving back that object without kind of nesting it in another key. Oh, that's not right. The ID is not right.
Yeah, it looks-
I restarted the server. We can't change any of the code anymore. And we're gonna keep losing items, yeah. But let me add it. Let me add it back. So this is we're not using a real database and
It's not persistent.
that's not persisting, yeah. But since I didn't restart the server, because whenever I change the code, it gets auto restarting the server. So it's our database is still in memory. So we got 2 items in there now. And now if we do our get, which you can't pass a body to a get request, so I'm going to turn that off. Now we get our array. Okay. So yeah.
Would it have freaked out if you left something in the body section? You tried to do the get, or would it just ignore it?
I did it a second ago and it froze it up. It yeah, didn't like it. All right, so this is like when we use Mongo, we are storing our data in the database as an object. So like this is like whenever we start using Mongo, it'll be exactly like this. In terms of like the data that it gives back. Like whenever we get back something from a query from Mongo, it's an array of objects or an object, and then you just pass that to your response. So like this, adding Mongo, you'll have to learn how to query Mongo and how it works and all that, but the code for your API will look a lot like this, even when we use Mongo. Yeah. Okay, so hopefully, like, you know, if we want to do this ID one, it's like, hopefully you could potentially sort of see how you would pull that off. Like, for the get method here, we'd have an ID. And so we would use the find menu item method in this case, pass it the ID, and then respond with that item. And then for the update, it's pretty similar to the post, except that we would use the update, pass it the ID, and then pass it the properties that came from the body. And some of them might be undefined, but that would be okay. And then delete, you know, you would use the delete method and pass it the ID. And so all that code would be inside this ID file in that case. And we would check the get, put, and delete methods and do something in the case of those. Otherwise, we'd give a 404. Yeah, so let's go ahead and do that, and then we'll be done for today. Let me make sure there's not anything else I want to cover. I know what I want to do. All right, so I want to leave it as an exercise for you all to try to extend those methods to do find by ID and update by ID and delete by ID. And for homework, go ahead and try and do that. And then for the rest of today, let's actually see this hooked up to our front end. I think that could be helpful. So you know, we've got, you know, when we're back to the browser instead of Postman. If we're doing, you know, API/coffee/menu, that's giving us our object that's got the menu key that's then got the array of objects, right? So this URL, you know, will respond with JSON. And so when we're writing our React code, we can fetch this URL. So we can talk to the API. So just like how you guys talk to the weather API in React, you know, that was a different API. That was somebody else's API that you were talking to. And so that was, you know, weatherapi.com/whatever the resource was that you were talking to. But we use that exact same method, fetch, and it's all the same code, except the URL is our API, and so it would, and since it's the same domain, since it's like the same server that's doing the front end and the back end, like we're like localhost 3000 serves both the React app and the API. So all you don't have to specify the host name. You just say like /API/coffee/menu in your fetch. Yeah. Yeah. And so it knows, like, if you only give it a relative route like that without the host name and stuff, it knows that you're trying to talk to like that same host name. Yeah. 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 So if we go to, I'm gonna end up changing the code and deleting our database, but we'll add stuff back to it in a second. But if we go to, so does anybody remember where the like React pages, which file the React pages in. We only have one page. And it's the root page. So which file is that? Here,
Some of the index one.
yeah, index.js is the root page, yeah, good. But if we wanted to, we could say, hey, you know what, let's make a coffee folder, and then let's put a menu folder, and then let's put an index.js. So pretty similar to the structure we had in our API, but it's not inside the API folder, it's just inside the pages folder. And so it's a React component. And so if we, yeah, so now what we do is export default function menu return yeah, sure, let's start with that. So this is a React component instead of that like function handler. And so now if we go to instead of API, we just go to coffee menu. What the?
Yeah, so put the background there.
Niche and blind effect.
It looks like, yeah, like.
It looks like lines, it totally does, yeah. I think there's probably something in the global styles here, yeah. So let me just kind of delete.
But it just does that style. They're like, yeah, everyone's gonna want this. This is what people are gonna be using.
Okay, so if we go to the root route now, I think it should just say, yeah, so it just has that H1. And then we've got our slash, or not API, slash coffee slash menu. So like the same way we do our routing for our API is the same way you do your routing for your React app, which is nice. So yeah, we just by putting a file in a particular place, we automatically made that URL, which is cool. And let's get rid of the, we can keep the blind effect if we want, but I'll just delete all the CSS that they have in there, and that should.
It makes me want to build a little lifter where you put like a triangle on the road.
There we go.
That's why I'm keeping out.
All right, so back to a less fun page. All right, so we're on our menu page here. I'm just doing this, like there's nothing about me using the same paths or anything. Like I just like there's the API paths, and then you know your front end paths may or may not mirror those. Doesn't need to.
Just
So this could be, you know, coffee slash menu or whatever. It's fine. Yeah.
probably how I can, so.
Yeah. Okay, but we want to, on this page, I want to query the backend and get the menu items and then show the menu items on the front end. So we've got our index.js for that. And who remembers how to fetch a backend? It's a lot.
Yeah.
It's scary. What? This thing. Holy shit, it knew. Wow.
Man, okay.
Wow. That's cool. All right, so async function fetch menu. And we use the fetch API, and notice like I can just do /API/copies this menu. I don't need to specify localhost 3000 or anything. And then that's responding with JSON, right? So we can do await response.json. It knew that it was nested in the menu key, right? Because remember, it's not the array. I put it inside the menu key, and then it's console logging the menu. Okay, so we have the function, but now to actually run this function, what do I put this in? Where do I call it? Yeah, so we need a use effect. Yeah. And so we only want this to happen. You only want the API call to happen once, typically on page mount. And so that is this good old brackets. And then we need to import. Oh man. Import use effect from React. Okay, so we've got our function. And then I'm going to call it here. So only on page mount. Run that query. So if we go back and open the console, we should see that it's because it's in dev mode, it's running twice. I think Braden explained that to you, but so I restarted the server, so it deleted everything. So we got to get all the code working and then add stuff from the database. All right, but we are getting back an empty array, which is, so it's working. If we look at our network tab and refresh this, we'll see that it's querying localhost 3000/API/copy/menu. It's getting back 200 okay, and that the response is an object with the key menu with an empty array. It's kind of small, but make that bigger. Okay. All right, so if we want to put the menu on the page, what's the next thing I need to do?
You have to assign that to a variable, right?
What kind of variable? Like just any old variable?
I don't remember. It must be something that you'd have to change or update, right?
Yes.
Like, so just var.
Well, yeah, so
Or
in
let-
React, if something's changing, we have to use a React method for that. What's that called? So there's use effect, and then there's, what's the other one?
Use state.
Yeah, so we need use state. So we'll have const. Yep, menu, set menu, use state, and we can. Because well, actually, let's make it an empty array. So we'll the menu is an array. Like we respond with an object that has the key menu, but like we'll just set the array. The menu is an array of objects, and so when we're pulling that menu out that key, so we'll just set. When we set menu, we'll pass it the array, not like the whole response. Okay, so we have menu and set menu, and it starts off as an empty array. But whenever we get our response, we will call set menu and pass it menu. Now it's going to start as an empty array, and then it's going to be an empty array. And so not much is going to happen here, but we needed that. We needed it in state in order to be able to use it when we actually render here. And so because it's going to start empty, then we're going to do the fetch. It's going to get updated. And then we need to change state so that our program knows to re-render and have the page be updated with the new menu. So menu is gonna be an array of objects, and so we want to loop through it. And so we do that down here, and it's gonna do it for me. Hell yeah. I love it. I love it. I love it. I love it. Yes, thank you. Do you guys have Copilot?
Not used it yet, because I wanted to have to go
Mine.
without it, but I probably can install it pretty
But
soon.
I'm less confident that it's doing like.
Yeah.
They're going, shit.
Yeah,
I wonder.
yeah, yeah, sometimes it's true, yeah,
Yeah, cause you know.
yeah,
Because you're familiar, I look at it and go, well, it maybe,
yeah,
maybe not.
yeah. But yeah, so it mapped through our array. And takes each item and then makes a div. With the key of the ID, which is just, you don't have to do that, but it's like makes React more performant. But then inside the div, we've got an H2 with the name and then 2 P tags. With the description and then the price. And so it's not gonna look good, but we're gonna have,
But it's gonna be there.
it's gonna be there, yeah. Whenever we actually add something to it. Now, we don't have time today, but we could have also made a form. That would have added stuff to the menu, right?
Okay, yeah.
So we'll
Like a user input
Mhm.
form where they're.
typing the name and description and then hitting a button and. And then we call our API and say, add that item. Yeah. Yeah. Okay, let's see if this is working. So I mean, as long as there's not an error, then we're assuming it's working at the moment, because there's nothing in the DB. So I think we're good. Am I still console logging it? Okay, so I think we're okay. We just need to add stuff back. So we'll go back here and do our post to copy/menu. And then we do need a body. Okay, it still has my old body, which is good. So I'll just add this a few times and then maybe add another one. So I got a few duplicates, but that's okay. I just want to get a few things on the page. Back to the page. Yeah. Oh, yeah. Far out.
That's just red.
Pretty cool.
Maybe from this one.
Yeah. Okay, so there's some more homework. So we'll start looking at the homework, we'll start introducing database stuff to you. I would try to mess around with this stuff before jumping to the database stuff. And like try to add the other methods that we talked about. And then if you really want to get fancy, you could try to make a form. But that might be a little bit harder. Yeah.
So like in the coffee shop, we were making an input form with the customer. Request a cup of coffee, so this is sort of an extension on that same concept,
Yeah,
not very far from.
yeah. So like adding something to the menu is not something that a customer would be able to do, right? So this would be more like an internal add. It'd be like this, but there would still be like somebody is adding stuff to the Starbucks website.
Like, it actually,
And they, yeah, so they're logged. Yeah, exactly. But yeah, we will, like, whenever we build out. We just need to have the menu to be able to order something, right? So that's why I'm starting there. But once we have the menu done, we'll make like. Orders or something like that. And the customer would then, select a menu item and say, order it, and we'll add that order to the database. And yeah. Okay, any questions?
Are you gonna post this file to GitHub or anything, or do you want us to just start from scratch?
Yeah, I will post it. So it is, let me push right now. Okay, so that's up there now, and I mean, I don't know if you guys know how to pull this stuff, but like if you just go,
We could just go to this folder and just clone it and pull it in.
if you just like download
Okay.
this folder.
Yeah.
I
Should be a button.
are you guys able to do that? Like just like download this
I
folder?
thought I had-
No. I go to a website that download, you paste in like the URL and then it downloads a zip file and then I just copy that zip file into my folder. I don't know how to pull it. Like
Well,
download it from.
you can download like the entire curriculum folder.
Yeah, but
This
But,
is
uh,
something like this, you could choose a zip file or not.
Can you send that URL?
it's just my desk.
I go to
Yeah.
But yeah, I would. If you like, just download this folder, if you can. And
this day to.
and then what you can do is. And then what you'll need to do is npm install, because it doesn't include the node modules, so you do npmi. And then you would do. Like, you have to be inside that folder, right? And then you do npm run dev. And then you'll have what I have, and you can start editing it. And I mean, what I could change it so that let me fix this now. I can actually make it so that the DB persists.
You could just have a default
Yes,
entry in the
I
menu.
agree. I agree. It's a good call.
Yeah.
It's amazing.
You didn't have to put-
So good.
That is so good for me to see. You do that, because I watch it and go, oh my God, you're just right.
It's getting better. It was not this good a few months ago.
No matter what.
So I said at the beginning, it's flat, it's gonna keep getting better.
I mean, push that up.
I'll figure it out.
Okay. All right, so now when you download it, you'll have some default data to start, which will be nice. Did it give it the right? Yeah. Okay, cool. So, I mean, that is about it on the API side. And then, so we'll need to learn DB stuff. But yeah, backend is like, it just in terms of like. It's just like, it's not as much to upload to your brain as like React.
Yeah.
Like that's the fun, that's the fundamental, like, you're just making more of those files.
Yeah.
Like, there's not, like, there's a request and a response. And I mean, we're gonna need to pull in the DB and do stuff with the DB. But like that's like the fundamentals. Now, like, there's a lot more, obviously, like. There's, dealing with files and uploading files to like a file storage, there's authentication. And logging in and logging out and, all kinds of stuff, but like. Yeah, yeah. But like, that's the fundamental there, what we just saw, so. All right, see you guys on Wednesday.
Sounds like a plan. Just let's get on this one, go.
See ya.